All right, it's Focal Point. Kevin McCullough in for Brian Fisher. Earlier today, the president said this in his speech to the UN. I think he said it. I can't hear it. All right, let's try it one more time. The president was speaking at the UN earlier today, and he said this.
The future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam.
All right, we'll end it there for now. Just a small portion, and one that I think is concerning. The future does not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. Okay. Kevin, sounds like you're upset that he said that. Yeah, sort of. Here's the thing. There was much that the president said today that was that really had quite interesting pieces of it. The president dedicated several long passages in the speech that he gave before the United Nations today, discussing and condemning the 14-minute video of the guys from Southern California that made the goofy little thing about the innocence of Muslims. Now, I'm kind of disappointed, and to be just dead level honest with you, I'm kind of shocked that the president had the gall to go back to the video issue again today. Remember when the attacks happened in Benghazi a couple of weeks ago, for a full 7 days, Dr. Susan Rice, who by the way is our envoy to the UN, went on all the cable shows and said again and again, this was not planned, this was not premeditated. How she knew that, I'm not sure. It seemed, at the very least, in the media that I was watching, that it could have been from the beginning, and then we found out that it was, and then eventually the administration said that it was. But for 7 days, she went out and she said, "This is about this amateurish, offensive video." In which the Islamic faith is put under this ridicule and so forth and so on. Have Muslims read Wikipedia? I'm just curious. Because on Wikipedia, which is on the internet, and they haven't burned down the internet yet, even the Wikipedia entry references some of the same claims that little film clip did. Here's one of the things that I know that Muslims get upset about, but Muhammad was a pedophile. He molested children. He married 9. I don't know what else you call that. It was an arranged sexual agreement between the girl's father and Muhammad. And that's pedophilia. And the prophet, as the New York Times has no problem always you notice you can get the Prophet Muhammad printed in the New York Times about 8 billion times a day. You can't get the word Lord in front of the word Jesus to save your life. But the Prophet, as the New York Times likes to put it, molested children. And yet we cannot even say that that's historically true without being told that it's going to cause this region of the world where supposedly all of this enlightenment and the Arab Spring came about is going to erupt into flames, and people are going to die because of it. That's why it didn't really make sense at the time for Dr. Rice to be saying that. What did make sense to me at the time was it was 9/11. They rolled up with mortars and large shell fire, and they burned one of our consulate locations down, and they killed some of our personnel. And that sure looked like it had a lot of planning to it. Didn't look like something that, a riot just sprang up and went out of control. So today at the United Nations, the president goes back to this idea that this video is offensive. And he talks about, for long sections of his UN speech today, about the offensiveness of it, but that, and kind of as a wink to free speech. But I believe that, if we're going to be free speech people, we have to allow people to say things we don't agree with. But we don't agree with that video, and it was amateurish. Why is it even being discussed anymore? There was something else that was grotesquely missing from the president's speech today, and it was the fact that he did not use the word terrorism once. Radical Islam, not used once. The idea that you have people that are bent on evil because a difference in ideology was not drawn attention to once. You had some perfunctory language about, well, we won't let Iran get a nuclear weapon, but we didn't say how we're going to stop them or if we're going to stop them at a certain time or anything else. The difference in what he said, and we will not hesitate to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. He didn't really say anything about how. The difference in President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu is Netanyahu has kind of said, hey, by this time, by this date, we're giving you a deadline. We're putting you, the terrorists in Iran, on notice. Stop what you're doing or else. Now, an honest question here is, friend, which do you think has a greater impact in dealing with people that you're having trouble negotiating with? Saying, no, Johnny, that's not very nice. We're not gonna let you do that forever. No, Johnny, you're not listening to me. I said that wasn't very nice. And even, okay, that's one parent. The other parent says, Johnny, stop that, or I will spank you. If you do it again, I will spank you. Sometimes Johnny won't do it the second time, especially if he believes that that parent will actually do what they just said they would do. Meanwhile, the other one's going, no, that's not very nice. That's not very nice. That's not very nice. No behavior is changing. There's no call to accountability. You're just continually saying to them, that's not very nice. So in the speech today, he didn't refer to the threat of terror or of those that practice terror. He did scold the maker of the film. By the way, I don't agree with that film. I don't know if I agree with it or not. I haven't seen it. And like most of the stuff on YouTube, I could care less what the person has to say. You know, there are people that make like tennis balls and oranges say things on YouTube just to see if they can get people to watch them. It's kind of the circus of the ridiculous, just to get people online and go, oh, that's so funny. How do you know that this wasn't something like that? No, it's on YouTube. 300,000 people have watched it. Allah has been insulted. And so he says that the future must not be, the future does not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. Well, that sounds an awful lot like some of the stuff that Ahmadinejad was saying yesterday. In fact, I've got a little bit more of the speech transcript here. He says, the future must not belong to those who target Coptic Christians in Egypt. It must be claimed by those in Tahrir Square who chanted, Muslims, Christians, we are one. By the way, where was that reported? Because I don't remember hearing people in Tahrir Square chanting, Muslims, Christians, we are one. The future must not, the president continued, not belong to those who bully women, but it must be shaped by girls who go to school and those who stand for a world where our daughters can live their dreams just like our sons. You know, that doesn't sound a whole lot different than something that George Bush said in the UN. Oh, my goodness. Kevin has just committed the greatest blasphemy ever uttered. No, it doesn't. It doesn't sound that much different because we would say that bullying women is a Western value. We don't value that. You know what the president didn't criticize at all? Mr. Mohammed Morsi's statement in yesterday's New York Times in which he said there will be times when our culture will be at odds with Western values. And basically, America has to just deal with it. That we shouldn't We shouldn't be offended. We shouldn't try to interpret that part of the world through our values. No, actually, we don't need to respect those values because we don't believe in the subjugation of women. We don't believe in the beheading of those who disagree with us. There is so much that we don't believe in that Islamic values stand for. In his first speech in Cairo, his first speech after taking office on foreign soil, he said to the students there, American values and Islamic values are in essence one and the same. I nearly threw up my lunch that day. I had, what is he talking about? I had no clue that someone would even honestly think that, much less say such a thing. The president continued, he said, the future must not belong to those corrupt few who steal a country's resources. It must be won by the students and entrepreneurs, workers, and business owners who seek a broader prosperity for all people. Interesting idea there. Oil people are bad. You notice what he's saying? Steal a country's resources. So if I own a piece of property and I have an oil well on my property, that must not belong to me. I must be stealing the resources if I put an oil rig in and sell the oil that comes off my property. Those of you in East Texas know what I'm talking about. He went on to say, those are the men and women that America stands with, those that seek the broader prosperity. Theirs is the vision we will support. He then says, the future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. Wow. Did you know, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, did you know, in the great international circus that is the UN, they're going to consider a plank in their legislative body to make it a crime to insult the Prophet of Islam? That's very interesting. Your calls are next, 888-589-8840. I don't think I did that right. 888-589-8840. It's Kevin McCullough for Brian Fisher on Focal Point. I want to talk. Let's do it next.